Unknown participant is now joining.
Aaron
is now joining. 2 participants are now joining. Unknown participant is now exiting. Is now joining. Three participants are now joining.
Hi, for those of you that have joined, we're just waiting for more folks. It seems like there are more coming on, so we'll just give it a couple minutes.
Cornbelt telephone
is now joining. Is now joining.
Okay. No, it should be. Push the button in the middle.
Tom Lovell
Is now joining. 2 participants are now joining.
You can, yeah, you can select it. You can select it.
Okay, well, we'll get started, everybody. Thank you for joining. I see there's probably some more folks that will be joining as we move along, but I want to keep on schedule here. I'm Bill Burnett.
Is now joining.
I'm a client service manager for Comtech in the state of Iowa. This is the carrier webinar for the Alley Wireline projects. And I just want to, I certainly don't want everybody to introduce themselves. That would take half of our session. But do we have, I think, Blake DeRucci from the state of Iowa on? Yes?
Yep, I'm here, Bill.
Okay. Mike Lauer from ICN, are you on as well?
2 participants are now joining.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, gentlemen. We also have Madison Height from Comtech, who's on as well, and she'll be sharing as well today. So again, thanks everybody for coming. Let's just get this kicked off. Blake, do you mind getting us started?
Sure. Thanks, Bill. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide. My name is Blake DeRucci.
Unknown participant is now joining.
For the state of Iowa. And it's good to talk to everyone. Thanks for taking time out to go over things with us.
2 participants are now
this
joining.
This has been a long time coming, so I do want to spend a moment and just kind of
Unknown
refresh
participant
everyone's
is
memory.
now joining.
Bill, is there a way you can turn that off, the announcements of people coming and going? If possible, that'd be nice, but I'll try to carry on.
Yeah.
Thanks. I just kind of want to take a brief second and kind of touch base on why we're doing this. This kind of started 4 or 5 years ago, and the state legislature was really interested.
Unknown participant is now joining.
PSAP consolidation. And after a few years visiting with them, what they really were looking for is trying to save money in the 911 system. So rather than force physical consolidation, we decided to incentivize that with physical consolidation grants that the PSAPs could take
Is now
advantage of.
joining.
But doing things a little bit smarter, more on the virtual or technological side of 911. So what came out of all of that effort, that 4 or 5 year effort, was House File 2254. And if you're interested, that you have to go back and look actually at the 2018 legislation. If you look now, there's a different version of House File 2254 for the current session. But so you have to go back a couple years to see what I'm talking about. But what that bill and piece of legislation did was require us to basically implement our plan to merge the wireline network with the next generation 911 network that had been established around 2011. So it's really the same. It will be the wireline traffic will be put
Is
on
now
that
joining.
existing wireless network. So we went through a process where we went out for bid and ended up contracting with ICN. Oh, go back a slide. To aggregate all of that wireline traffic. A portion of that, if you guys don't mind, there's a ton of people on this call, so if you could mute your phones, if you're not, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So a portion of this effort is also by Comtech, who is our
now joining.
next generation service provider. There we go. That's quieter. Thank you, everyone. So I know this has kind of been a long time coming, which is why we wanted to touch base with everyone today and just kind of provide that background and then provide an update because we are ready to start migrating that network. One thing that I do want to add is, in reality, we're actually about a year behind. When we were starting the migration and starting to really plan in depth for that migration, we soon discovered that we are going to have to modify the way that we did ALI, or automatic location information, throughout the state. So that kind of delayed the effort by about a year while we kind of got those ducks in a row. So this presentation will be really detailed out by ICN and Comtech, who will go over the ALI process as well as just the wireline migration effort itself in detail. So the final thing for me, and there's been a number of questions on this, there really is no change to the local surcharge relationship. Telcos will continue to remit their surcharge payments directly to local 911 service boards. So if you're familiar with kind of the wireless side, wireless surcharge comes to us at the state level, and then we further remit it down to the local jurisdictions. But Wireline has always gone directly from the local carriers to the local service boards, and nothing is changing with any of that. So just wanted to highlight that as well, because I know we get a number of questions. So I think that's all I have as far as kickoff for the presentation. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mike Lauer with ICN for kind of a detail of the wireline process.
Hey, Mike, before you get started, can you just pause for a second? We're trying to work out to control the details here. I'm sorry, guys.
No worries.
There's people that aren't. Any way we can stop black boxes. We're trying to control the 160 people on here that not everybody's quite muted and so forth. So I think that'll, as soon as we get that under control, then those black boxes will disappear. So my apologies for the delay. Okay, well, it looks like we might have different versions of Skype going on here, guys. So if everyone could just, it sounds like people have muted. Appreciate that. Apologize, Blake and Mike and everyone else. We're just going to have to, I think, navigate through that. We're not Madison's presenting. She has different options than I do as far as trying to mute everybody and such. So let's just move forward and appreciate everybody's cooperation on staying on mute until there's a question and answer segment at the end. So Madison, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please.
All right. Thanks, Bill. This is Mike Lauer with the ICN. Everyone, thanks for joining today. We'll try to keep this high level, and we can answer specific details either later via email to me or on the call. But I wanted to just kind of show this this map here so that everyone can see probably something that is really high level from a perspective. There's tons of sticks and clouds and boxes that we could always draw in, but really just wanted everyone specifically from the perspective of local telco providers and wireline 911 deliverers to kind of see where are some key places that will be going on. As of right now, and you can kind of see this in the circles that are represented by purple. Right now, the current setup is every local telco provider or 911 CAMA trunk provider. And I say that CAMA trunk just as a loose term because that can mean two things. One, to the current PSAPs for wireline delivery, and then also just the fact that you have 911 trunks that go to CenturyLink. Everyone currently dumps into one of 8 selective router locations, and you can see them there in the purple dots that are drawn on this map here. There are a couple of extra dots that are listed on there. The green ones are ICN point of interconnects. Those are places where ICN will pick up traffic, and then there's also a couple of the Comtech data centers where call routing appears for there. So the current setup is all local telcos currently dump into those selective routers, and then from that location on the old wireline network, there's actually selective routes that happen from these routers to the current CenturyLink wireline delivery network that delivers to the PSAP. So it stays semi-local. There is some routing that goes back to Des Moines, but it basically stays, ingress and egress stay pretty close to those areas from there. With the new setup, ingress points are still going to happen from the perspective of local telcos to those same select routers. ICN went out for bid to gain connectivity to the local PSAPs, and the cost-effective measure that met the state procurement rules was CenturyLink won that bid to be able to provide at least connectivity for the next 2 years from local telcos back to the ICN point of interconnects. We initially had 5. 2 was the minimum that was there, so that's where those calls will be delivered to, or these kind of 2 green points. As you can see, they're both on different power structures for the state, and they're both separated by about 120 miles. So definitely met some criteria for some public safety recovery and uptime needs that we required on there. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Madison. And this is just a logical representation of kind of what this is going to be. There's some of your crazy sticks and some clouds for anyone who wants to see things. But it basically shows you where we have connectivity. ICN has 2 separate networks. On the wireline network that we have built, the ingress network, it is completely separate from the PSAP delivery network. So this is a completely separate network, and we have it separated even east side and west side of the state. There is connectivity that is between those locations, but we did make them, solely sustainable to where, if anything ever happens, they will function and deliver calls on their own if there's ever, for some reason, an emergency where certain parts of the state are down. So it is a mesh network. It is on a ring topology, self-healing, and it does have connectivity from all the selective routers back to each of the prospective kind of eastern western networks that we have displayed here. What does this mean for local telco providers as of right now? It means you guys don't change anything. You still actually have your 911 calls that are routed to CenturyLink. It still goes to those selective routers. You don't have to make any changes. Changes actually happen at the CenturyLink selective router between ICN and Comtech. So you guys don't, as far as I know, there's no changing of ESN numbers. There's no changing of any anti-alley information on your side. We do that all with CenturyLink, so it should be as painless as possible. And we will, I don't think we will, and the plan is to not have to engage any of the local telco providers unless there's a change that's happening. There's been a few locations that have talked about, doing some switch upgrades or doing a few other things like that. So if that's happening, and we need to know that and there's a change in trunking, we can definitely talk about that. But for the most part, there will not be much, if anything, needed from you guys from the local telco perspective when it comes to the wireline changeover. It will all be between CenturyLink, ICN, and Comtech. Going forward from there, like I said, the plan is for this is to keep this ingress network in place for the kind of legacy TDM CAMA trunking that's in place, and then we will start to in the future look to what does SIP look like, and then what does that look like for connectivity for SIP out to the individual telcos as well. So we already are having a few conversations with some managed kind of 911 anti-alley and also just VoIP providers that provide 911 to call logic centers. That's happening as of right now, and we already have plans in place for that. So that'll be, going forward in the next couple of years. But as of right now, we do anticipate this to start up in May, and hopefully have it finished, I think, by the August-September timeframe is what we have from there. We do have some cut dates available. We have an initial, they've not been agreed upon, but we do have initial lists of 10 or 11 PSAPs that we are going to cut over at first, and that includes those ingress calls get cut over as well and sent down the ICN network. So once we do have that available, I believe we will be sharing that probably at the 911 emergency 911 meeting as soon as it gets approved by all sides, ICN, CenturyLink, and Comtech. That is all I have on the wireline portion of things. So Bill, I can hand off to you, Madison, to talk on Alley next.
Thanks, Mike. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about, some things that you'll be seeing, some things you need to know regarding the, the Alley wireline project. So, overall, Comtech is taking over the statewide Alley services from CenturyLink. That's why we're here talking about this. Some things that may be pain points. There is dual provisioning that will be required of both the Comtech and the CenturyLink Alley until migration is complete. And so the estimated timeframes for those are early April to begin the dual provisioning, and at this point, our date could change, but April 4th is when we are projecting to begin the dual provisioning, and then it will go through basically till all the PSAPs are cut. That's assuming that your coverage area includes all PSAPs, and that is expected in August. The PSAP cutovers are expected to begin in May. They'll start kind of onesie twosies just to make sure that we get all the kinks out of the system, and then to expedite the process as fast as we can, we're going to look at doing them in groups. There's been a lot of different considerations in trying to determine how to cut PSAPs in what order. Some of that's still being fleshed out. One of the primaries is selective router, same CPs, et cetera, et cetera. But as Mike stated, we'll share that as we have a more complete schedule. So, and that should be coming fairly soon. I'm sure you have been contacted. It's possible. I actually have gotten an email just as recent as today saying, hey, we heard about this. We're not on your master list. There's quite a few carriers out there in Iowa. So if by all means, if you have not heard from Comtech regarding this, please reach out. I will, maybe we can provide Madison an address for that. I'll let you do that when it comes around your turn. But for most of you, you should have received probably at least multiple outreaches regarding a form that we have for carrier onboarding information that we need. And so we would like to have all those in by the 31st. For those of you that have already done that, thank you very much. Appreciate it. A majority have. There's just there's still some folks we need to hear back from. In the months to come, the Comtech Data Integrity Group, which we refer to as DIG, will be contacting you all, establishing user accounts, providing training. We also have a user guide that we're providing support as needed as we go on to that. So if you haven't heard from them regarding any of that, don't worry. That's to come in the coming months, and they will be there to, again, to just help you get on board with all that. So so you continue provisioning. That's all I have. Madison, do you want to take over for your next coming slides? Hey, Madison, can you, we can't hear you if you're speaking. Uh-oh, a little technical difficulty, folks. Bear with us. Let's see here. We've been making the slide deck available to us. Yes, we are actually recording this. Now we also we'll make the slide deck and the recording available. And for anyone that wasn't able to attend, that'll, that link, we'll provide a link for the recording of this meeting. Madison, can you hear us? Cannot hear you. If need be, I am not nearly as proficient a woman.
Hi.
Oh, hey there.
My apologies.
Hello.
This is Kevin from Frontier. I didn't see the alert, but I'm actually on 2 calls right now, doing some troubleshooting.
Hi, are you all able to hear me?
Yeah, Madison, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Sorry about all these technical difficulties. So hi, I'm Madison. I supervise the NGDIG team. Thank you, Bill, for the intro. I'm going to take us over to this next slide. So this slide outlines what specifically we're going to be providing with the Comtech Alley DBMS. It gives an overview of what both carriers and PSAPs have access to. But in particular, the points of interest for you all is that it's going to be a place where you can view and download all the statewide MSAG. It's available 24/7 for free. You can also view and maintain all your Alley records through this database. This is also where, if there are changes that need to happen to the MSAG or the Alley, there's a workflow to be able to communicate with both NGDIG and PSAPs. And it gives you access to a couple of different reports and just as much access to information as we can with this. And so in order to get access to that system, we need to receive your CSP user information form. As we mentioned before, everyone should have received one of these, but if they haven't, please reach out to us. I will include our email in the chat after this, but our email is ng-data, data-services, services, at comtechtel.com, comtechtel.com. And so you should have received an email from us that would have this form and instructions for this form. And essentially what we're looking for here is information about your company, your associated NINA ID, and who we're going to talk to about Alley, and who's actually going to be working in the database day to day. And so the points of information that are really important are that we get your individual user's name, email, phone number, and their IP address. Because we have a secure database, we require that IP addresses are loaded behind our firewalls. So it's really important we get those in. It can take up to 2 weeks to load those. With this information, we'll create individual user accounts that'll give you access to all that information I covered. This is also where you can establish if you'd like access or if you'd like us to set you up with Sftp so you can do some automation with uploading your AliSoy files. And finally, there's a little section at the bottom where you can indicate if you have 24/7 contacts, and this will just kind of start our conversation so we can get your user accounts made, get you ready for training and user verification testing, and ultimately dual provisioning. And so I'm going to pause there. I know that's a lot of information I just threw your way, and see if anybody has any questions.
Madison, it looks like there's some pending questions in the chat.
Can somebody read them out? Just because if I open them up, it'll block out our presentation.
Sure, I can do that. Excuse me. Let's see. So will the layout of the file uploaded to Comtech match the file layout required for uploading to Intrado?
I believe so. We use the 512 NINA 2.1 ALI format. So as long as you're using that for your AliSoy file, it should work for us.
Okay, next question is, will we be able to upload files via FTP or SFTP?
SFTP, yes.
Okay. Next question, if we are currently uploading data to Intrado, do we need to communicate anything formally once the transition is complete?
I'm not sure who you'd need to, or who you're asking if you'd need to communicate anything formally. I don't know what you're required to communicate to your customers for whom you load, but CenturyLink Intrado will be well informed of the transition from our point of view. But I guess without knowing who you're asking about informing, I don't know that I can answer that fully.
Okay. Last question on here, are you making an API available to billing software vendors? For example, we use Innovative Systems for our billing, and we would prefer to automate the process of uploading data to Comtech.
My understanding, and I may be misunderstanding, but my understanding is a lot of billing software will allow for some sort of export of the customer information and specifically any changes that may have occurred. And so if that's configurable to have our required ALI format, we can give you this SFTP where you can automate a file being dropped, and we can automatically send you any result files from that file. Does that answer your question?
You could, there's someone that's not on mute. We kind of hear a little bit of background noise. Would you mind not talking, please? Okay, that was the last question on IEM. Any others? Okay, here's kind of a follow-up, I guess, to the last ones. So I take that to mean if our billing system can upload a file to Intrado in the ALI format, then this will work for Comtech too, correct?
I don't want to guarantee yet because I don't know the mechanism through which you get from your billing software to Intrado, but if you're using, essentially it should be something like a place where you can drop a file. It'll be a folder structure that we have a connection between us with. And if that's what you're doing with Intrado, then we can do that same exact thing with Comtech. That's my understanding that most people have that set up, but I don't want to guarantee and then figure out that this is a different configuration. And if you'd like, if you do have, if you want to talk specifically about what your configuration looks like and if that's doable with Comtech, you're again welcome to email that ng-data-services@comtechtel.com, and we can email back and forth about it or get on a call just to kind of suss out all the details with it.
Okay. Vicky Nelson asked, is there a period where we need to upload E901 information to Intrado and to NG901 where we currently upload?
Yes, there will be a time frame. That'll be the dual provisioning window that Bill mentioned previously, and I believe that that is going to span, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, April through August of 2020.
Correct. Roxanne says, I spoke to MACC and they said they would not have an interface. It would be the same, oh, it just moved, sorry. It would be the same as we use today, where it's put in a CSV file and then we drag the file to the Intrado window. Would it be the same?
I don't know that.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I fully understand the question, but the ways that you can upload, if you have a soy file that has multiple changes in this file that you want to submit, we do require that the file type is different than CSV. It's going to be .dat, which you can just change pretty easily. We have like some naming requirements that really just means no special characters, and I believe it's under 19 characters that the name has to be. And then once you have that file created in the proper format, you have the option to either use that Sftp, which is a drag and drop into a folder, and then that will begin an automatic processing. Or if you don't want to do Sftp, you can also use our web UI, where you can manually upload an ALI soy file and get your results through that database.
Right. And I'll just point out too that, we do have coming up some training, a user guide, et cetera, that we'll be sharing, in the coming months, that'll get more specific on some of that information. Our exchanges cross state lines. Will Comtech share ALI information with neighboring states, or do we need to continue uploading data to Intrado for that?
That's a great question, and I don't know that I can speak to that fully for this deployment. I do know that we won't have entire states ALI information from bordering states, but I don't know about these specific, I'm assuming, smaller regions that are served by an Iowa PSAP but happen to be customers in a different state. I don't know the specifics of that, but I can absolutely follow up and make sure that information gets back to you all.
I've got that down as a follow-up. Will we need to give all current information we've uploaded to Intrado, or will that be transferred over to Comtech and we're just doing updates?
Once we start the dual provisioning window, you'll need to maintain both Intrado and Comtech's ALI database through that window. And then once we notify you that the dual provisioning window has been closed, then you just only maintain in Comtech from there on out.
Okay, another question. How's the initial database loaded into Intrado?
Say again?
How is the initial database loaded into Intrado?
We will have carriers loading their ALI records. So what carriers will need to do is request an extract from Intrado in that 512 ALI format, and then you'll be able to either drop that file via the web UI using the ALI soy processing, or you are able to use that Sftp, and we'll have a period of time where you're able to drop your ALI files, and if you do run into any issues with formatting or processing or anything along those lines, we will absolutely have resources available to help troubleshoot where your issues lie.
All right, and this may be our last question. Then there was a response to an earlier question. So let's see, last question, I believe. If we are using Intrado CenturyLink to upload data today, then during the dual provisioning period, do Lex need to establish a separate connection to Comtech, then post-transition disconnect the CenturyLink link? I assume as we'll be directly inputting into Comtech, correct? Is Comtech a replacement post-transition for Intrado CenturyLink? Yes. So can you talk to that initial one potentially, Madison? During dual provisioning, do they need to have a separate connection to Comtech?
Yes. So during dual provisioning, your process with CenturyLink Intrado should have no change. Until the end of dual provisioning, you should maintain that database with absolutely correct information. And then during the dual provisioning window, you're just going to keep both databases fully up to date every single day. You're going to put any updates that happen in there. So there will be that couple-month period where you're keeping both up to date. And then, as you said, once the dual provisioning window is closing out, then you no longer need to maintain that CenturyLink Intrado database, and you just maintain the Comtech database.
And as far as connections, I think we'll have more information, with training when we do that.
Yes, we will speak in detail about, we'll make sure that users get their login information. We'll make sure that we give them verification testing time to make sure that we've confirmed they can access and load data in there. We'll make sure that anyone who wants different styles of connection, that we discuss those and set up any requests. We'll have much more information coming with all of that.
And last question, I think this is a good one to close out with, is will you provide a detailed timeline for CSP training and onboarding? If so, when will that be available?
Yes. So we are actually in the process of finishing up our training now, and I plan to have our training scheduled, if not by the end of this week, middle of next week. So you should see an invitation within the next 7 days coming through with training dates.
Great. Okay, one more. How frequently are we allowed to upload information to Comtech? Weekly, daily, hourly?
All of the above.
All the above. I think it's unlimited access, correct?
Mm-hmm.
There's no restrictions?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Unlimited access, there are some file size limits, but they're pretty massive. So unless you're making huge numbers of changes, you should never really feel any impact from that. Though if you do have any questions, it'll be discussed in detail in our user guide. But yeah, you're able to upload file after file after file. One at a time will process, and they'll just queue them up in our UI or via the Sftp. So if you want to drop 5 in a row for 5 hours straight, you're absolutely welcome to. They'll just process in the order they're received.
Well, we keep getting questions in. You need a drink of water there, Madison? You're doing great.
Oh, I'm good to go. Thank you.
How often can we request and extract for auditing? I believe that's as often as you need, correct?
Yeah, so it's self-serve of both the ALI and the MTAG. You'll be able to pull those for free on demand 24/7.
Another one, today we received verification that of our uploads that they have passed. Will that be the case with the new system?
You will, when you upload I'm assuming this is about ALI soy files, and when you submit an ALI soy file, you will get results files. One of those files is called a .done file, and that will let you know your file has completed properly. And then there will also be a handful of other results files, depending on if there were any errors or auto corrections that happened in your file, that will point out how many errors you got, what those errors were, or if anything was auto corrected. So that will be the notification that you receive that your file has completed processing.
Okay. So in summary, yes, and details, will certainly be a part of that training that you'll receive.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you, Madison.
Any other questions? My pleasure.
Yeah.
And like I said, if any other questions do come up, I've said it a couple times now, but don't hesitate to send us an email at ng-data-services@comtechtel.com. We absolutely welcome any of your questions.
And I will put that in our email chat here as well. So again, please, if you don't feel that you have received the form that is listed up here, this is just a portion of the form. But if you don't feel that you've received that, please do email this address to get that. If you have already, thank you. Blake, anything you would like to add to close out?
Just again, want to reiterate my thanks for everyone's participation and cooperation. I know this is a change, and change can be scary sometimes, but I think this is for the better. So again, appreciate your hard work. And if there are any questions, happy to answer those offline. We'll be waiting for any of those questions. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you. And again, I've just put the email address at the bottom of the chat window. If there's no more, well, thanks everybody for your time, and hopefully this was helpful. Feel free to reach out. Thank you.